Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Amazing. Welcome back to the podcast. We have got the incredible Andrea with us today. Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, thanks, Jacky. So I'm Andrea. I have a business called Curious Mind Coaching, and I look after women in particular with anxiety. So helping them to sort of solve anxiety.
Amazing. Okay, that is it's such a necessary skill. We'll talk more about the business as we go, but it's such a necessary skill with the amount of anxiety in the world at the moment. So I'm super excited about this conversation. So before we jump into that, let's go all the way back to your own healing journey. And what was the moment that you realized that something needed to change, that something wasn't right, that you needed to actually start healing?
So I think I was thinking about this question when you sent me over the prompts, and I think the first moment would have been when I went through coming out as a gay woman. So I was, at the time, I was married to a guy, and we'd become sort of very good friends, and that was it really. And up until that point, I'd lived what would be called, I'm doing my air thingies, air quotes for people that obviously can't see because we're on a podcast, but air quotes, normal. I was living a normal life, married to a guy, day job, la 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 la, and then sort of just started to realize this isn't quite right. Something's not quite right here. So it was going through that whole sort of discovery, I think, was the first point for me.
Wow. I mean, that must have been a journey to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, there was I think that there was two steps, or maybe even more than two steps. So the first step was this marriage is a friendship. And then there was maybe I am gay, but I wasn't sure because actually my husband was my first partner as well. So I'd never experienced another relationship other than my husband. So there's this whole thing of I think that could be the case, and thinking about women that I used to think I was sort of idolizing as a teenager. So Annie Lennox, I'm thinking of now from the Eurythmics, and then thinking, well, did I actually fancy him? Is that what was going on there? So there was that, and then there was so there was that sort of realization. But then there was the whole thing of the parents thing. So this was just trying to think when I came. It would have been in the 90s, probably late 90s. So there was my sort of parents, the consideration of my parents at the time, and what would they think? And my dad, very traditional, and we lived in a place that it wasn't a small village, but it was sort of very white. You didn't really see gay people. You didn't see anyone different from just your normal sort of white person walking up and down the street. So, there was that as well. I was what's going to happen with my parents' reaction? So, yeah.
I think it's so interesting when we go through a healing journey, because there's so many moments like that where you're trying to heal, you're trying to step into who you're supposed to be, you're trying to discover yourself and create your own path, but then there's all of this attachment to what other people might think, or how we might hurt other people, or how we might impact other people, and what that might do to them or cause them to have to deal with. And I know even with starting the podcast, I had those moments of suddenly realizing that some of the things that I was going to be talking about are things that my family never know that I felt, or never know that I've gone through. And suddenly I was going to put them on the internet and that shocking kind of thing of oh my gosh, how is this going to impact other people? I think it's a question that comes up quite often in the healing journey. How did you kind of like deal with that as you were going through?
So it was sort of forced on me. It was a very difficult situation. So I think I like went through probably two of the most stressful things that you can go through in your life, all at once. I went through like coming out, and I went through getting a divorce. And unfortunately, like my husband at the time, he obviously didn't want this to happen. It was like my instigation. Um, and his response to that was to tell my parents that I was gay before I'd told them. So I came home one day from being out, doing a course that I was doing at the time in sports massage, to find my parents sat in my living room waiting for me to like do the thing. So so that was, yeah, that was really, really hard. I mean, at the time I was really angry with him, but now I look back on it, I understand. He was like, it was, I think it was like a sort of, is there a way that I could stop this happening? Maybe if like I do this, then she'll sort of change her mind, or so that forced the conversation. My dad didn't respond very well to it, which is what I was worried about. But he did come round after a while. He came round, and I realised, having sort of had conversations with them afterwards, his main concern, because they've not really had any exposure to gay people, was like, what do I say to my friends and my relatives when they say, like, has Andrea found another boyfriend? What am I going to say? So it was helping him sort of navigate that as well, that sort of social thing.
Mm. I mean, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. Like that is so unfair and it like so gracious for you to be able to sit here now and obviously look back at that and say I understand why and that process of kind of still like making sure everyone else is okay as we go through this journey. Like it's a skill I think that we learn as we heal in that compassion of like everyone's going through something and we can really feel much more compassionate to what other people might be feeling and why they might take those actions. So yeah, I'm so sorry that that was that kind of start of the journey for you. But like as you were going through the journey, did you have moments where like you doubted yourself and you had to like embrace yourself and who you were as well?
I think that was, I said to you that was like the sort of first, I would like call it like a sort of unfolding or opening of me, of like my true self. And, not long after that, I went through a whole thing around, I'm very introverted, and I used to always be like, I've got to apologize for this, and I need to be louder, and I'm too quiet and I need to say more. And that sort of opened the door for me exploring like the introvert and what gifts I've got as an introvert that that are not necessarily, so working in my day job. I have a day job as well, and I work in a big corporate. Um, so introverts are not prized in that environment. It's getting better, but in those days it was very much like, if you're in a meeting, you didn't say anything. Well, they're not very good at their job because they're not the loudest person. So that sort of helped me to start to explore that, and to actually be quite vocal about, we need to help introverts to be able to bring their ideas to the fore, because we're missing half of the ideas in the room otherwise.
Yeah, and normally with people who are introverted or more analytical or more amicable and quiet and they come, they take a bit more time to gather their thoughts. When they do have something to add, it's normally really good. It's normally really useful. And actually being able to start giving a voice to that population, whether in a workplace or, in the healing journey, I think is a really important kind of part of that process. So I'm glad that you sort of found that along the way. And I think like there is no way to heal and not find out who you are. Like I think those two things are so connected. Like it's impossible to do one without the other, which is, I guess, quite cool in a way as well. So as you were going through, were there any like really hard moments, really like rock bottom moments, like moments where you just thought like this is too hard, I'm not gonna make it, like, I don't know if I can have this conversation again or like challenge this like norm again or like go again.
I think for the whole coming out thing's really hard. It's just, and I think yeah, people talk about this a lot. Even now, it's like when you, so in at the time I was working on projects in a large corporate. Again, it wasn't really, you didn't really let it be known widely that you were gay in those days, and there were times when. So I would move from project to project every 6 months. Every time I moved to a new project, I'd have to do the whole, is it safe here to actually be open or not? I'm not really a sort of person that tends to hide things, and I'm probably a little bit, or was in those days, a little naive about, you know, oh, I just say it'll be fine. Everyone's lovely. It'll be fine. Um, and I had some particularly horrible moments where there was one situation where I was really bullied, and I later found out it was the worst thing. It was actually a gay female. I found out she was gay because I heard her talking to a girlfriend on the phone after I'd had this sort of series of weeks and weeks of her just being really horrendous to me. Um, so yeah, there were moments where I was just like, oh, this is just, I'll just say I've got a boyfriend. It's just easier, but in the moment, but I never I knew that was the wrong thing to do, but it was hard to continually have to assess and then correct, because in those days the assumption was,
Mm.
have you got a husband? What's your husband's name? Well, actually, it's not a husband; it's a girlfriend or now a wife. So yeah.
It's so interesting in like one that the world has moved on, hopefully mostly for the better, especially in this area, and actually it's much more accepted and much more um like able to be discussed and not as frowned upon as it was by older generations and by so many structures and corporates and like all of these places. But I think as well, like it's really good even now for people to be able to listen to these conversations and actually understand that like it's normal to struggle with having to walk into a situation and assess whether it's safe. Like it's normal to like feel like it's hard and not always easy to be yourself and to show up authentically and to like do all of these things. Because I think so many people, they almost try convince, especially with like social media and stuff like that. And I think, especially in that world of extroverts and introverts, like there's a lot of extroverts online who are very comfortable with just saying what they want to and showing up how they want to and like just being. And I think there is like a lack of awareness that actually it's okay for that to be a slower process. It's okay for you to feel your way into it and, not just run in head first because that's what you see a lot of people doing. So, like, I think it's really important for people to actually understand that, like, healing is such a personal journey. Like, it doesn't have to look like everyone else's the same as, and we've had so many people talk about so many different topics, but this is the first time we've actually spoken about coming out, which is like so incredible. So I think like actually having that ability to actually share with people like what it was like, and there will still be people right now who are struggling with this exact thing, with families who might not be accepting or living in communities that might not be accepting. So I think like it's still so important to have these conversations and really help people kind of understand how they can move forward. So like as you've kind of walked through this whole process and you've gotten to where you are now and you're kind of looking back, what would you say like your biggest outlook change or like your biggest belief change was, like from then to now?
So I think it's like embracing my difference. And it says it's the thing that was like the thing that was most challenging has now become. So, in my corporate day job, I'm very different to most of my colleagues. And, my wife says I'm like a little sparkly unicorn. And I used to put a cap on that and be like, I need to be like suited and grey and corporate. And I don't do that anymore. And I've actually realized that that difference is what people love about me. And they'll ask me to run meetings and facilitate sessions because I bring something that's different.
Mm,
But it does take a bit
mm,
of guts when you first start showing that, because you are being your authentic self and you're being different.
mm.
So you're standing out or slightly aside from people. And that always risks, someone saying, like, the criticism coming and, so you do feel vulnerable. But it's definitely something I've learned to do.
That's amazing. I think that that's so important. Like there is still so much going through school and going through university, like getting a job. Like there's still so much conformity that is in how people have to behave or look or sound or, exist in order to air quotes get by and get ahead and all of those things. So I think that it's really refreshing to kind of hear that actually it's been embraced. And like you're asked to do things specifically because you're showing up differently and you're showing up as yourself and you're bringing something like different into that space, which I think is really, really incredible. Now, as we go through, like I obviously know you, I know your journey and what you're doing now, and this kind of like move into helping people with anxiety. And did you feel a lot of anxiety as you were going through your own journey?
I would have said at the time no. And I think I present like the way I come across is quite calm, grounded. And I think that is why, like when I first started going into doing my coaching and my breathwork business, and I just had a lot of people coming to me saying, like, can you help me with anxiety? And I think I've realized now that that is this sort of this co-regulation. So there's like my ability to ground is what is sort of drawing people to me. But now I reflect, then there were sort of presentations of what you might call anxiety or overwhelm or stress. And I used to have regular migraines and IBS before I started doing this. And when I say regular, like every fortnight, one of those things. And I haven't had any of those things for 2 years now. So, and I'm using the same techniques that I will use to help people with anxiety. It's recognizing the signs from your body and then knowing what you need to do to be able to bring yourself back to a place where you're not getting to that sort of, can't carry on anymore type, which is what my body was basically doing for me. It's like you will have a migraine and you will go to bed because I wasn't listening to those signs.
Oh, absolutely. I always say to people, like, your body will tell you what is needed. And if you listen, your body will be really gentle with you. And if you don't, your body will hit you like a brick wall. Like, there's no other
Exactly that,
option.
yeah.
Like, there's no other option. It's so interesting. So, what made you actually like say, I want to go and do coaching, I want to do breath work? Like, what made you seek those skills?
So coaching was so when I was going through my discovering my introverted power phase, I was working with a lady. She was my boss actually in my corporate job, and she was a qualified coach, and she helped me so much. She just unlocked all of this stuff inside me. I used it before I worked with her. I would say when I started a new role, I'd say, "Yes, I'll do this job, but I don't do presentations, just so you know." And now I absolutely love it. So I just saw like all of the stuff that she did for me, and I just thought I just want to do that I want to be able to do that for someone else. So that was the coaching. And then once I'd got my coaching qualification, I realized there was just sort of something missing for me in terms of like making that sort of ignite and take off. There was something that wasn't quite me with the coaching. There was something, a little gap. And it was like this sort of holistic side that I'm really into. And then when I did my breath work, it was like just an incredible journey. It was a 10-month course. And I just learned so much about myself during that time. And it's enabled me to offer like this sort of unlocking. that I was looking for with my coaching. It's just sort of that dual thing.
I love that. And for anyone that doesn't know, what is breath work?
Okay, so breath work, just in its simplest form, is just manipulating the breath for potentially for health benefits. So I do it mainly for sort of health benefits with the anxiety, but it's like a direct route to your nervous system. So if you change the way you breathe, you can change the state of your nervous system from either aroused to calm or calm to aroused by just changing the depth and the speed of your breath.
So anyone who knows me, has been following the podcast for a while, or any of my other streams, will know that I am an absolute nervous system like junkie. I adore the nervous system. I think it is the most incredible thing that we have going on in our body. And the fact that there are ways that people can breathe and, move and exist that can actually regulate that system for them and help them reduce anxiety, or, as you said, like come into a calmer state or shift up into a more like energetic state if that's what they need, I think is a really important part of healing that actually a lot of people don't know and they don't really talk about, because so many people talk about doing journaling and meditation and going for counseling and like doing a lot of the sort of like traditional things that are expected around the healing like space. But actually, breath work is a sort of, I mean, not breathing is not new, but a newer modality that more people are talking about now and more people are kind of becoming aware of in that kind of like space of healing. So like, can you just tell me a little bit more about it? Like, tell the listeners a little bit more about like what it is, how does it work? Like, how did it work in your healing journey? Like, what does it look like for you?
Yeah. So there's the particular modality that I was trained in is called conscious connected breathwork. So this is a different type of breathwork to the one I've just described, and
Mm.
this is used particularly to slightly alter conscious state. And by doing that, what that allows is it allows us to release stuff that we've been holding on to. So potentially trauma that's held. They've done it. They're starting to do more and more studies on this now. But one of the things that this breathing does, so we're slightly over breathing with that type of breath work, and it closes down a part of the brain called the default mode network, which is sort of at the front of the brain, and it's where like our ego mind sits. So it's where our stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves are held, our beliefs. So for me, using this type of breath work, I have had, and I'll just describe, your listeners will either be like, wow, or so take what you will, but this is my experience. So I've connected with my dead grandmother, who's sort of come to be like a sort of spirit guide to me. I would have never have like thought that this was possible, or even like if someone else had said this, I would have been like, right, really? But I've had that experience. I have also had incredible ideas when I've been using this type of breath work. So lots of my ideas for my business have been born during these breathing sessions, which are around about an hour. And you normally use sort of quite different music. It's normally sort of tribally type bass. It helps sort of change of conscious state. So ideas for my business, because this part of the ego part of the brain where you would normally go, oh, perhaps I could go out and do this wonderful thing. And then the ego brain will go, I don't know why you think you can do that. You've never done it before. And put all these stories, that's gone. So I always have like a pen and paper and I scribble after a session. I've had so when I used to have IBS, I used to get these cramping pains when I was doing the breath work, which was like an IBS episode. But I learned to sort of breathe into that and relax. And I'm absolutely convinced that that's part of the healing of the IBS, what's going on there.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think that will do for now. But there's lots of other experiences, and particularly with anxiety. So the way I use it with anxiety, you have to be careful if you're very anxious using this breath work, because it can replicate like a panic attack because we're breathing slightly faster. But once I get someone into a place where they can feel that stuff that's going on in their body and they can feel where their upper and lower limits are, then we use this type of breath work, and it helps to release. Often with anxiety, people have stored stuff that's built up, and this is what's called the sort of root cause of the anxiety. It just helps to release all of that stuff out of the body.
It's so incredible. I can't. Like it literally blows my mind. I absolutely love this whole concept. I was listening to a different podcast a little while ago, and they had a breath specialist on the podcast. He was a doctor, and he was saying that like something crazy, like 96% of the world doesn't actually know how to breathe. And like they don't actually know how to breathe properly, like because it is a function that just happens and we don't have to really think about it. A lot of people aren't actually utilizing the incredible ability that like your breath has. And I think that process of like moving anxiety out of the body and like actually being able to quiet your ego brain and like get into that space of coming up with ideas, like all of that is so incredible for somebody who's wanting to kind of go on this healing journey, because there is so much to move, isn't there? There's so much to clear when you're trying to heal, and there's always like that ego story that will come up and wonder whether you can and what everyone's going to think, and how it's going to affect everybody else. And I think actually giving people those like moments of respite and moments of like relief when they can just exist in themselves and not have to worry about all of that other stuff. Like, isn't that such an incredible gift?
Absolutely. That just reminded me, one of my clients, my sort of early days, sent me a message after one session and said, "Thank you so much. Normally, my body is buzzing the whole time, and it's the first time I felt peace for, in can't remember how long." And it does have this amazing, this amazing effect sort of afterwards. People that have been very anxious just feel completely. It's lovely to feel if you've got a room of a few people, you can feel the difference in the energy from the start to when you finish a breath session. It's just
Like,
incredible.
oh my gosh, literally all I'm thinking while you're saying this is when I do a retreat over in Europe again, like we need to make a plan to get you over there,
Oh, I'd
get you
love
to come
to.
and do
I'd
a
love
session.
to. Yeah.
Look at us just doing business while we podcast. It's so great.
Yeah.
But like this is the thing that's so incredible, I think, about this whole process is like when you go through a healing journey, what you learn becomes what you can teach. Like the methods that you have to make yourself feel better will help other people in the world. And I think there's so much linked to that idea of purpose and healing. And it just becomes so easy. Like it's not a forced conversation. It's just you talking about your own journey and like naturally making connections. I think that there's something so beautiful about that in if people are willing to kind of lean in and do the hard work, there's something even bigger than they ever expected on the other side.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and it reminded me of I don't know who said it now, but someone uses the phrase "coaching from within the mess," which is basically. I used to think like you have to be through your stuff to be able to teach it. You have to be like clean and through it and wonderful and healed, but actually there is something about coaching from within your own mess and telling people like your journey and it allows people that access point to be like, oh, okay, I don't doesn't have to be perfect. I just need to start.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like I always say to guests, to people that I come into contact with, like healing doesn't have to be your whole life, as in you can live your life and enjoy your life. You don't have to constantly be, um, fraught with, oh, I can't be happy yet because I haven't healed. But at the same time, we're always uncovering new layers. We're always uncovering new beliefs. We're challenging, new systems, new things that we didn't realize that we needed to challenge. And that's always going to exist. Like every time you move to a new level, there's something else that you need to look at, or something that you need to face, or
Mm.
something that will upset your nervous system because you are expanding. And as we expand, our nervous system tells us, like, be smaller because we need to fit in. So, the whole time that you expand, there's always going to be that battle. And I think like that it's so important for people to understand that healing isn't a like, oh, we go around the cycle once and then ta-da, like we're healed. But at the same time, like I will always say I am a healed woman. Yes, I still have things to heal, but I am a healed woman. Like I have learned what I need to learn. And when things come up for me now, it's not a case of like completely falling apart. It's a case of being like, oh, look at that, I'm triggered. Let's do something about that. And like we move on. And it's like that's what healing is about. There's like it's such a different shift, I think. So on that topic of like what you do when things come up for you and like how you actually like go through this process, if you were sitting down with one of our listeners right now and they were just at the beginning of their journey, say they were, super anxious or they were just about to come out or they were just about to like do something really, really big for themselves, what would your advice be on like how they can navigate through that?
So I think for me, and this is just in, and I didn't definitely didn't do this when I was coming out. I didn't even know this existed. But for me, the huge difference has been connecting to my body, because now I can do that. I have these two centers of wisdom now. I have my brain and I have my gut feel, and I use both. Whereas before, I would have overridden my gut feel by like, well, there's no rational reason why you're thinking that. There's no evidence for it, just ignore it, and then 3 weeks later think, oh, I wish I'd listened to that gut feel. So I think it's like start and just start with where you're comfortable, and you will have to go outside of your comfort, but you don't have to step like into like complete fear. You can go little steps at a time, just slightly outside of your comfort zone. And then if you can learn to actually listen to what's going on in your body as well, what your body's telling you, you'll have this sort of double whammy superpower of like thinking it and feeling it. And that really does tell you what's the right direction, those two things together.
To get to that like gut feel, do you just use breath work? Have you always used breath work, or are there other ways that you get into your body?
So I did now I use this thing, which again was completely, when I was taught it, I was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't do this. A thing called felt sense, which is literally, it can take like a couple of seconds, and I do it regularly throughout the day. So you literally just do a quick scan up and down your body and just ask yourself, how do I feel? And when I first started, I would just have to go with like, I've got a little tingly feeling in my foot. I could not connect any more than that. I was completely in my head, or my shoulder's a little bit tight today. But now I can do like a real sort of in depth, like, oh, there's something doesn't feel quite right in my gut. What is it? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling, what's the feeling? I can put like more of a sort of accurate name on what it is that's going on. So it's just a practice thing. So I would say that if you can start that, and really don't
Mm.
expect to be able to get like a huge full answer back, but just whatever you can feel is what you can feel. And the more you practice it, the quicker you'll be able to do it. And it really helps me. Like if someone asks me a question that I think is like really, that the answer could be really a game changer or not, depending on which way I go, I'll just do a quick, like, how do I feel? What's that doing in my
Mm.
body? And get that sort of wisdom coming back as well.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I'm a massive fan of therapy. Like I've spoken about this loads throughout the podcasts. And I do somatic therapy, which is exactly that. It's,
Mm.
but in a safe environment so you can go really deep really quickly. And there is it's a whole other language, I think, when you actually learn how to distinguish your emotions and say what truly is going on for you. Because I think we're so limited in our idea of what emotions we have. Like people will be like, are you happy, sad, angry? Like that's pretty much it. And like there's so much else that we can feel and so much else. Like I remember learning about the scale of emotions, and it literally blew my mind because there was so many emotions, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I've ever felt half of these emotions. And then actually, when you think about it, you're like, oh no, I have felt all of them. I just haven't had a word to describe what I'm feeling, or like I haven't been able to say, this is actually what's going on for me. So I think, like, exactly that, if people can start connecting to their feelings and then putting words to those feelings and actually being able to move through that, like, that's such a powerful thing to do. I absolutely love that. That's really, really cool. So in the kind of spirit of we're never done, what is your next level of healing? Like what's the next thing that you're focusing on?
So for me at the moment, I'm trying to transition out of my corporate day job into my business full time. And that, oh my God, Jack, I mean, you know this, but it's just like, and our business coach, Lisa, talked about this. And I always think of Lisa when I have, so you have these little mini meltdowns and they're just normal. I mean, anyone that's an entrepreneur that's listening will be like, yeah, you do. But this was such a revelation to me. And so I had like a big meltdown where I almost like gave everything up. I was like, it's not worth it. It's just but now I know that you go through, it's like sort of climbing a staircase and you get to a landing and then you have to have like a little pause and give yourself permission to stop for a moment before you level up to the next bit. So this is like my constant healing now is with running your own business. There's always something that you don't know how to do or or a block you have to overcome to get to the next level. So this is, this has become like my continual healing now of working out what the next block is, allowing myself the time and grace to overcome that. And then, having a little rest before I go up to the next stage. And the little rest bit was quite hard. I'm not great at that, but I'm getting better.
Mm, I love that. I love that analogy of a staircase. I always say it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's fast. And I think a staircase sounds much more peaceful. I like it. But it's so true though, isn't it? Like when you're going on a healing journey, and I think people who have to heal from something big, like this is what I'm kind of seeing in a trend in the people that I speak to, like people who have to heal from something really big in their lives normally have the ability to then go on and start a business because they've learnt so many skills and they've figured out who they are to a certain degree that that process of stepping into a business isn't actually as scary as it might have originally felt. But
Mm,
I think that idea of like the fastest route to personal development is starting your own business. Like that is the truth if I've ever heard it. Because as you said, like there's so many things you don't know, so many things you have to figure out. And that process of your ego brain kicking in, like your nervous system feeling overwhelmed, the like everyone around you potentially still being employed and like not understanding what you're going through and the challenges that you're facing. It's like it's so insane when you like think about the process. And I think like having that process of like continuous healing around your business is like for me it's one of the biggest blessings I think about running a business is that you
mm,
just get to know
mm,
yourself so well. And I think that that is incredible. Like I know not everybody sort of feels the same way, but I think that it's absolutely incredible that like we have that ability. So what would your kind of final thoughts be on like just like wrapping up for the listeners, like this journey?
I think for me, it's being authentic and then just taking like those little steps that you need to be authentic out in the big world. And each little step that you take, there'll be like a little mini healing that you'll have to do. And each time you do that, you'll learn how to do that quicker, for yourself to regulate yourself, and then those steps can become bigger and bigger as you get more confident.
Mm. Amazing, amazing. I love that so much. Andrea, it has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing it and being so open. I think that it will be massively helpful to people. I am going to put a link to your social media. If people want to come across and explore breathwork, then they definitely need to do that. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of the Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Diary of Discovery.